Naval SEPA. You must change course and return to the Indian Ocean immediately. Disobey my order and you will be attacked. Over and out.
This is Coalition Warship 121 in transit in accordance with international law. You are not being challenged.
U.S. Navy warship transiting near the port of Fujairah and the Sea of Oman. This is the Zepa Navy. This is the Zepa Navy. Final warning, final warning, final warning. It actually happened very close to
the port area
of High Island. Attention all vessels. Attention all vessels. Attention all vessels in the Sea of Oman. This is the Zepa Navy of Iran. If you see any warship nearby, keep a distance of more than 10 miles from them because I am ready to open fire without prior warning.
Well, with this, we begin the communications that have been taking place. This is being broadcast by Iranian television. We'll also have to see the American version, but as you know, here we try to look at different versions. And well, this time it's Iranian television that's broadcasting this supposed communication between the US Navy and the Iranian Navy, supposedly warning that if they stayed in that area of the Strait of Hormuz, they would open fire. They said that according to this, the United States response was, we're passing through because there is an international right of passage and that's why we're here. We're not posing a challenge. They allegedly said that in the US. What does it mean? That they are not operating to attack? This is part of what is being observed right now because that's what Donald Trump himself says. We have to look at the details of the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump says that they are going to control here, meaning that the United States is going to block the passage. I mean, Iran blocks here, but the United States positions itself over here or here and is going to block the passage. Wait, hold on a second. Who are you going to block? Are you going to block the passage for the ships from Qatar? Your friend who has one of your bases and is sending oil tankers to China, for example. Are you going to block him? I wonder. Who are you going to block? Who is this about? What would that blockade look like? Let's discuss details, okay? Let's see what's going on, but I'll tell you right now, I'll give you a heads up that we're going into the details. If the United States blocks here, the Iranians say they're going to block too. So besides this strait, they're going to block this other strait. And well, that's how it is. Blockades everywhere, right? This is a never-ending issue. Hi Blanca, have a great Sunday. Thank you. How are you? He sends big greetings. We're there and getting started. Greetings to Cebola. He asks, who are you waiting for from the last one? Big greetings. Cebola, how have you been? Terry, how are you? Good afternoon to you and everyone joining. We'll get to the comments in a bit, but look, let's get into the details because there's a lot of information about what's happening right now, so let's get into it. We already have Peter's dubbed moment. We'll be right back. Sorry, we'll come back to this part in a moment. Peter, who will be the next Prime Minister over there in Hungary, has made some comments. Let's listen to what he says.
And we put it on solid foundations, and as much as possible, we also expanded the cooperation among the countries of the Visegrad Group. In this spirit, my first trip will be to Poland to strengthen the 1,000-year-old friendship between Hungarians and Poles. My second trip will be to Vienna, and the third to Brussels to bring back the European Union funds that belong to the Hungarian people.
That's another topic, but one day we have to talk about all the corruption that Viktor Orban was involved in, which was extremely absurd. He took money from the European Union, which is why everything was blocked for him. He was taking money from the European Union, and at one point he spent a huge amount of money to build something like, let's say, overpasses, like a road with overpasses and turns and I don't know what else. You'd see it and say, the project looks good, so what's the issue? And you didn't open it up, you opened the shot. Nothing over there, nothing over here, nothing over there, nothing over there. There wasn't even a road. It was in the middle of nowhere. So they would say something like, oh, look, there are European Union funds, like for you to do this, so go for it, apply, but we don't have anywhere to put it. Everything here is already built. Look at that land. There's nothing there, not even a street, but just do it. And then we send them the photos, they send us the money. I mean, it's crazy. The absurd things they did there were crazy. And aside from the closeness with Russia and all that, he was already being accused a lot of corruption. But anyway, going back to what we were talking about with this Iran issue and the negotiations, there's another comment that the same J.D. Vance made about it because he's been criticized a lot for basically not achieving anything. Look, this was more or less what was expected. I mean, what was expected after a month of war, after eliminating Ali Khamenei, after everything that has happened. The first negotiation wasn't expected to go well. The fact that they're meeting face to face right now is already a bit of a win. Unfortunately, it seems that the outcome wasn't so positive in the sense that, well, it's not happening. Usually there's a negotiation, then everyone backs out, or we just don't agree. But we'll talk again next week and keep trying. Right now, well, it's not very clear when the next one will be, if there even will be a next one. But J.D. Vance himself says the following. Let's listen.
Let's go. The second thing Golly Bob said, which again I found fascinating, was, we refuse to give up the right to enrichment. And I thought to myself, you know what? My wife has the right to go skydiving, but she doesn't jump out of a plane because she and I have an agreement that she's not going to do it because I don't want my wife to jump out of a plane.
Okay. I don't know. This is one of those weird comments J.D. Vance makes. And well, another thing that stands out is the comment made by Pakistan. After all, they were in the middle of negotiating. Or Pakistan has a lot at stake because they have a deal with Saudi Arabia, and in theory, they are obligated to defend Saudi Arabia if the war continues. I mean, they would have to send troops. In fact, they already did. They sent 13,000, 18,000 troops or something. They sent F-16 planes. They're sending 8 over there. If you've noticed in the last few days, there have been attacks on the United Arab Emirates. There have been attacks on Kuwait, but there haven't been any more attacks on Saudi Arabia. Supposedly, we'll see if that gets confirmed later, but apparently there are negotiations. There's Saudi Arabia. They were also in negotiations as an observer. Russia was there. China was there too, besides the United States. It's unclear if Israel was there. They likely weren't. And also, the United Arab Emirates wasn't there, and they were very upset, by the way. But let's say if the United States is there, then Israel doesn't really need to be there, right? There's that closeness, you know? But Pakistan reacts to these failed negotiations with the following. Let's listen.
In Allah's name, most gracious, most merciful. Nama adu minasali Allah Rasul al-Karim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. Allow me to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America for responding to the call of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif, for an immediate ceasefire in the region, as well as for accepting the Prime Minister's invitation to hold peace talks in Islamabad. The delegation of the United States of America was headed by the Vice President of the U.S., Vance, and Iran arrived in Pakistan. Vance and the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran was headed by the President of the Iranian Parliament, Bakar Ghalibaf, who arrived in Pakistan yesterday to participate in the Islamabad talks. I, along with the head of the Defense Forces and the head of the Army, Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir, helped mediate several rounds of intense and constructive negotiations.
This is the reaction for now. The delegation is not open to further negotiations. But what is striking is that Pakistan, immediately after this, began to send more military forces to Saudi Arabia, perhaps also to send a signal to Iran not to attack Saudi Arabia specifically. Another issue that also draws attention is from the Vice President of Islamabad. Let's read part of this message, which is obviously, as always, not very explosive, especially on a Sunday. From the United States, from S. Well, I feel this time it's a message more led by the Vice President of Islamabad. The United States delegation was led by the Vice President of the United States. Let's see, let's put this here. This is part of the message that Donald Trump gives in a series of statements where he claims he will begin the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The delegation was led by the Vice President of Islamabad. The delegation from the United States of America is going to close the strait located between Iran and Oman, he claims, and Trump directly accuses Iran of extortion by the Vice President of Islamabad. He also ordered that any ship drawing attention or posing a threat be targeted, but questions why no proof of mines is sent. Now he ordered that any ship that has paid, and that's why those ships from any country that have paid will be blocked. Iran, the United States of America, was led by... First, by what right? By what right? You can't pay whoever you want in waters that aren't yours, but let's say you do. What are you assuming? The American delegation was led by Vice President Islamabad. If the United States of America paid, there would be no way to know. It wouldn't exist. I mean, it's not going to be a transaction by the Vice President of Islamabad. I didn't block them, and that would be understandable. I don't want them to use my banks for issues in countries where there's an attack or a war and so on, right? Could you justify that part and say, well, the United States delegation can use these things? No, basically that's as far as it could go. But as you just showed with cryptocurrencies, if you can use reals, yuan and euros, you can use any kind of cash by the Vice President of Islamabad. So it's not possible then. Is it a somewhat empty or a very empty threat to tell the ships that they've already stopped? Well, let's not go into detail. First, before we continue, let me take a short break. United States delegation. There are reports that a ship has already been stopped, but not by the Americans, rather by the Yemenis here. It was led by the Vice President of Islamabad, so we might possibly see this strait being closed as well. But on this matter, we are first trying to confirm who stopped it and which ship it was, so we can try to give you all the details. The United States delegation had free passage in international waters. Why? Well, because Donald Trump said so. The message states that Iran has no navy, no effective air force, and no defense systems. From Islamabad. United States delegation. Trump claims that more countries from the United States, close to the United States from America, were led by the other conflict, or is it an extension of the conflict? In the end, that's also part of what's being reported right now. And well, let's go ahead and talk about other important points on this topic as well. Within all of this, we're going to see several reactions. Iran issues a new warning, basically a threat to the United States after the failure of negotiations and also after the comment about the Strait. They claim that what comes next will be a bigger choice, and well, they made several threats. One of them was very harsh. We're going to talk about it in a moment, but first let's hear what the president of the Iranian parliament says. That's Mohammed Baker or Baker. Actually, it's not really like Baker in English, but it sounds similar to Baker. Baker Calabas issues a warning according to what he said today, hours after the first high-level direct negotiations concluded. He says if the Americans test our determination again, we will teach them an even greater lesson. He says that this person has been one of those who have reacted the most to this kind of situation. Well, about struggles and well, there have been reactions, says the Navy of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. They send this message, which is, I insist, a message that has been escalating in tone. The Strait of Hormuz, the Revolutionary Guard assures, remains open for civilian ships under close monitoring. They say that military ships approaching the strait will be considered a violation of the ceasefire and will face a severe response. That was another message. The Revolutionary Guard is gradually escalating its rhetoric. Another message that has been given, and this is in this area of the map. Let's see if we can show it. It's in this area, a boat with around a dozen armed people on board. They just attacked a nearby cargo ship. This is in the strait. It's not Hormuz, but rather the Al-Madeb Strait in the Red Sea. What has been confirmed is that a small boat with 12 armed men, they attacked a cargo ship. The attack failed. They say they couldn't board the ship. The ship continued. They believe it's the Soutiles. Most likely it's the Soutiles, obviously, because they're the ones who operate in that area. But it's likely that the Houthis are already starting to operate in the area. The only thing he knows is what I'm telling you right now. Although, yes, it does seem like the ship situation is already happening. Let's see if we can confirm the ship situation, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But the map, this is the point where these Houthis would be operating, and Tino says... He says, I've often felt Trump is always performing, even in his speech and gestures. Honestly, it doesn't seem normal for someone in his role. There are things going on there that are curious with Trump's health. Suddenly he's showing signs of things that people assumed would eventually happen to Biden. Well, it seems like they're happening to him. Trump, when making certain comments or even certain decisions, it seems like he loses his train of thought a bit. That's something they also accused Biden of. They constantly bring it up, but more so with him. Well, it seemed like there was good delegation in the sense that he had delegated to people close to him, which also raises the question of who is actually governing. That was another issue. And in this case, well, maybe he doesn't have as many delegates, but that also makes him more erratic in that sense. Now, apart from what the president of the Iranian parliament said, he also warns about other points. 4 points, basically. First, in the statements this man makes, the ones he says to Ghalibaf, he didn't say, if he challenges us, we'll respond with a stronger action, just like his initial comment. He also later stated that the United States would be in debt to Iran and would have to earn its trust. He says, in order to find a longer-term solution, basically, as if saying right now we don't trust you. Iran also says that there are good initiatives to show goodwill, which will lead to progress in the negotiations before they collapse. But they say that this is not clear at the moment. He has also gone so far as to call them the enemy. He says they have reached a state of desperation and Iran is not going to surrender to threats. Well, those are some of the comments made by this person. Alright, let's move on to other important points. Thank you. Donald Trump today also said that the United Kingdom was going to join them in this next step. Let's go to the map. He stated today that the United Kingdom was going to join at this point, no, towards the Strait of Hormuz with the idea of removing the mines. Yes, I mean, they said, no, well, the United Kingdom is going to join, and so obviously they immediately went to ask Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, hey, is it true that you're going to join this thing about removing the mines and all that stuff? Well, let's get to the comment. Let's get to the details. According to reports from the Guardian news outlet, which is a media outlet, the British outlet reports that the United Kingdom will not participate in any blockade, any mine-related issue, nothing at all. According to Trump's statements on Fox News, he assured that it won't take long to restrict access through the strait and stated that numerous countries are going to help remove the mines and block the strait. He mentioned the United Kingdom among them. He said the United Kingdom would help block it, but they said they won't get involved. That's not true. I'm not going to. He contradicted Trump right away, saying, don't drag me into your mess. We have no intention of getting involved in the conflict. We have no intention of blocking anyone at all. By the way, the Iranians are currently announcing, the British announced that not only are they not going to block, but they are going to talk with France and with other European countries for them to create their own strategy and negotiate, which we also know they are slow at. Also in Europe for these matters. I mean, European countries usually are. They first mediate among themselves, then later as well. But they take time. It's not immediate. The decision isn't quick. And that's also, well, it's important, right? Another important point is what has been reported according to what media close to Trump like Fox News are reporting, claiming that 2 U.S. officials were closely involved in this negotiation. They claim that Vice President J.D. Vance is already joining the Iranian delegation in Islamabad. They tried, to talk about all the demands immediately. Well, there was no progress on the main issue, which is the uranium issue. There was no progress in dismantling the main enrichment facilities, nor was there any talk about recovering the uranium, which are the most serious demands. also the issue of accepting the broader framework of peace, security, and de-escalation. That wasn't accepted either, and there was no effort to stop funding terrorist proxies like Hamas, nor the current issue, which is opening the Strait of Hormuz, which basically caused the most important topics to immediately collapse the negotiation and everyone backed out. They said there's no way to talk when one side has 10 points and the other has 15 points, but all the points are the other side's red lines. Or most of those points, if they're all red lines. The only way to negotiate at this level is by winning a war. If it isn't truly won, I mean, if the other person isn't like, well, waving the white flag, I surrender whatever you want, right? If not, it can't be done. And there are two risks here, right? Either troops get involved and the war drags on with losses on both sides. We already know this will be complicated, possibly even impeachment for Trump. In that sense, it's a very risky part, and the other is even riskier, which is like the unmentionable option. Let's call it the nuclear option. If there's no other way, if you can't negotiate with these people, they're about to have nuclear weapons. This is an existential issue, and it wouldn't necessarily be the United States. I mean, the United States would be one possibility, but the other possibility that's becoming more likely is Israel. So the little button, and a nuclear bomb that would be small, they think, to see if that would make them surrender. And then it goes into the phase of actually negotiating, right? But at this point, things are still very, very difficult, and hopefully it won't have to reach that level. According to a report coming out right now, there are 13,000 troops from Pakistan would be heading towards Saudi Arabia, towards King Abdulaziz Air Base. Well, it's not that they're all there yet. I mean, some troops are already there and others say they're going to add up to 13,000. But from what I understand, at least some of the troops are already there. And the 18 fighter jets, we also mentioned them yesterday, a total of 18 aircraft, including F-16s and other aircraft from Pakistan's defense that are either on their way to or already in Saudi Arabia. But regarding the idea that Saudi Arabia says, I'll lend you money and I've lent you billions of dollars, well, there's an agreement there to negotiate. There is an agreement of mutual assistance, even mutual defense, and to do business and everything. But anyway, so in that sense, the Pakistanis themselves are supporting Saudi Arabia specifically, right? Let's get to the question. What's the most serious threat the Revolutionary Guard has made so far? Here it is. This, so far, is the one that I think has attracted the most attention, the one that several media outlets have also been commenting on, and here it is. Is this the biggest challenge from Iran or already a threat as such? This is the comment they make, that if the Strait of Hormuz is now blocked by the United States, they say the enemy will be trapped in a deadly vortex. Whatever that means, well, it sounds very bad, right? The Iranian Revolutionary Guards have responded today, Sunday, to the comment made by Trump. At this point, it's not the politicians anymore, it's the Revolutionary Guard, who basically are the ones in control, the ones who dominate both the Strait and politics. Right now, they are truly the ones who are in control. He says the following. He warns that any miscalculation would lead the enemy into a deadly vortex. All traffic is under the control of the forces. The commander of the naval forces of the Revolutionary Guard published on his social network that the enemy would be trapped in a deadly vortex in the Strait if they make a wrong move. This came about 2 or 3 hours after Donald Trump made his announcement or criticism on this. In this post, which we saw a moment ago, in this post the Iranians basically say, it says, look, that's how Trump writes. The uppercase, lowercase part, I mean, for a president, it's kind of odd, right? That's where he mentions blocking and that there's some extortion from the Iranians and so on. So it's kind of strange because he says, so you're extorting me, well, I'll extort you, and everyone is extorting each other and everyone is an extortionist. I mean, it's crazy, right? But anyway, that's the way Donald Trump has expressed himself on that topic, and that was his response. So, Hours later, the response from the Revolutionary Guard was basically, well, there's no sign anywhere of any intention to calm things down, basically, right? He also sent a message to the Chinese. Let's go with that. What's happening in Iran isn't enough for Donald Trump, and now he's already targeting China. And besides, just a few weeks before the supposed meeting, I say supposed because it's clear to me that they might postpone the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in China. By the way, Donald Trump warned China that he will impose 50% tariffs if China provides military aid to the Iranian regime. The head of the White House warned that any country providing military material to Tehran will be subject to a tariff on products exported to the United States. It's basically once again going back to the issue of threats through tariffs, but that's also clear. By the way, there's also a message from the United Arab Emirates, and the United Arab Emirates says the following: the Strait of Hormuz has never belonged to Iran, and they can't close it. And that's the truth. The reality is that the Strait of Hormuz is divided between two countries, Iran and Oman on one side. But in the middle, there's something called the Right of Passage, which, although it's not technically considered international waters, is an international right of passage that's basically the same thing. You can't close the strait to begin with because it doesn't belong only to you. It also belongs to another country, and other countries have passage rights, including those nearby or wanting to visit. The same thing more or less happens with the countries on the other side. For example, with a ranch, if you have a very large ranch, you have to allow a right of passage at certain points so people can pass through. Because if not, just imagine the little ranch, the ranch that's in the middle. No one will be able to get there now because the one over here doesn't give them passage. The one over there doesn't either, and neither does the other one. That's why these rules, these laws are made, so there has to be a mandatory right of passage. No, it's not if you want to or not, or if you feel like it today or not. No. You are obligated. Now, the Minister of Industry, the one we saw here on the screen, from the United Arab Emirates, Sultan Al Jaber, stated today, Sunday, that the strait does not belong to Iran, so Iran cannot close it or restrict navigation. The strait has never been Iran's property for them to be able to close it or restrict passage, he said in a very brief statement. By the way, the people from the United Arab Emirates are very upset about the interruption. The interruption of a vital global economic artery is a direct threat to the energy, food, and health security of all nations. This behavior is illegal, dangerous, and unacceptable to the world. It cannot be allowed or tolerated, nor can we let it happen, says Sultan Al Jaber himself. Well, these are also part of the messages that are out there, so let's move on to other important matters as well. There's already a reaction, by the way, from Viktor Orban after losing the elections over there in Hungary. Let's get to that quickly.
The responsibility and the opportunity to govern were not given to us. I congratulated the winning party. Congratulations.
Well, quickly then, you don't even tell me to do it completely. Excuse me. I was just left there with my coffee. This brief message we have here. But well, that's what matters. Basically, he acknowledged it, and that speaks well of the country. It even speaks well of Orban that despite how controversial he is, he accepts this. I think it's extremely important and necessary for his country. And that, well, you have to acknowledge that part as well. Despite the controversies, despite whatever you want to say, you have to acknowledge that at least he left in an apparently dignified way. That's what you can see there, at least. This image stands out. It's been a while since we've seen him. It had been several days since we last saw Palabareza, the man known as the heir over there in Iran. Well, he hasn't lived in Iran for a very long time, but it is certainly noteworthy that this time he's going to Sweden, to the Swedish parliament. It's important to remember that Sweden and many European countries have a large Iranian community living there. The Crown Prince, as he's called, says he doesn't see himself as a prince. Palabareza or Reza has arrived at the Swedish parliament where he will give an important speech. It will be interesting later on to see what Reza Pahlavi says, what comments he makes. And well, we will be paying attention to that matter. That is obviously important as well. By the way, also on the official account of Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, who, although we know he doesn't have much strength, much power, or whatever you want to call it, I already clicked the translate option, right? This is Masoud Pezeshkian's official account, the president of Iran. It says the following: if the United States government puts aside its totalitarianism and respects the rights of the Iranian nation, there will surely be ways to reach an agreement. Ricardo, I thank the members of the negotiating delegation, especially my dear brother Dr. Kalibaf, who is the president of the parliament. Well, that's a very political, very diplomatic message. Iranian nation, surely it will leave totalitarianism respects. The president of parliament was not diplomatic at all. This one was a little more diplomatic. But well, at least from him, it seems like he wants a bit more diplomacy. A speech in that sense, well, a bit more. In that sense, openness to negotiation, unlike other figures. Now, in the meantime, we haven't talked in this whole report about what's happening in Israel or what reactions they've had, as if nothing is happening. But things are happening, and the Minister of Defense from Israel has already spoken out. His name is Israel Katz, by the way, who appears in this image where the Minister of Defense makes a statement from southern Lebanon. They say the residents will not return to southern Lebanon, and our goal is to disarm Hezbollah. Well, that certainly draws attention. Obviously, what does this message mean when it says that the residents will not return to southern Lebanon? I mean, it refers to the same Palestinians will not return to their homes. I mean, how is that? Is it really like this? Is this for real? Let's see, this is the border with Israel on this side and Lebanon over here. Over here is the Litani River. They say the residents will not return to their homes. The people who live here are not going to return. If they mean the Lebanese who live here, that would be very strange. I mean, I understand that Hezbollah members are not going to return to this area. Okay, you understand it because it's a terrorist group. It's a group you don't want there. But you can't stop people from passing through, right? I mean, that also drew attention to the comment. We'll see if a clearer explanation is given in that regard. By the way, changing the subject completely. Well, a water crisis caused by drought is already starting in a municipality over there in Texas. By the way, I know people watch us in Texas, especially in San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. Thank you very much. This time it's another municipality called Corpus Christi over there. They say they are facing a significant reduction in their water reserves, which is forcing local authorities to implement extraordinary measures. It has even opened a debate about the sustainability of the supply in the area. This is what living through a severe drought is like, and this has lasted for the past 6 years, but the drought hasn't stopped. Look, let's see if we can go to the sea. Let's go to Texas. Well, according to what's being reported in Corpus Christi, well, it seems they're experiencing a pretty serious situation, right? This is in South Texas, in this area, well, a little further south of Victoria, let's say. It's not this area. Let me see if you can get the power over here. Excuse me, let me lay it out. If you can see this journalist here, it's just that I can't see over there, but I didn't know here on the screen. And it's in Corpus Christi, where this is happening. The risk of an unprecedented water crisis has forced the city to speed up emergency plans to avoid mandatory cutbacks. They have seawater, right? Let's see, what they really need is drinking water, while water reserves are hitting historic lows and rain is becoming less and less likely as summer approaches. City officials acknowledge that without substantial rainfall or new sources of supply, the city will have to turn to the sea. It's crucial for the refineries and petrochemical plants in the region. It's huge because in the end, about 5% of all the gasoline used in the United States is produced right here in Corpus Christi. That's how important the position is, and obviously it's necessary to provide water for those people, right? Let's see if we can leave. Thanks. That's it. There's already a rough estimate of the cost of the war for the first month and a bit, right? I'm sure they're reporting that $280 billion have been spent. This is impressive, isn't it? It's a tremendous cost and, well, it's unclear where the war is headed or what the goal is, since if it was uranium, they didn't get it. to overthrow the regime. No, the regime is exactly the same, but the worst part is, there's still a regime, but it's worse than before, and now it's the Strait of Hormuz could be closed, and oil prices are high, and all prices are going up, and it costs $280 billion, apart from the human cost, which is tremendous. There are many people who lost their lives, which is not this one. A war. There are obviously victims, right? According to what's been reported so far in the conflict, at least up until now, that's the estimate they've made of the expenses they're incurring right now. An amount they're saving by no longer paying the airport security personnel. But well, it's pretty intense, isn't it? The cost has gotten out of control. They claim that in the first 40 days, $280 billion have been spent. The conflict started as an operation. A quick operation called Epic Fury has turned into a much more complex, chaotic, and costly campaign, much more than expected. At least one of the critical points was the downing of the F-15 fighters, which forced an extremely expensive and risky rescue operation. Multiple planes and soldiers were used in that rescue operation. Well, it's now acknowledged that they have already destroyed the famous MQ-9. Do you remember? The MQ-9 Aren't these drones really expensive? 24? And those official reports, right? The cost is tremendous. And those are the stealth drones that are hard to detect and all that. And there are 24. That's something already acknowledged. It's not a matter of, or because many media outlets, let's say pro-Russian ones too, have reported it. But that's a correct fact, right? We have to acknowledge when the facts are correct, they're correct, period. That's the end of the discussion, right? Go ahead. How much does an MQ-9 cost? Let's see what the cost is. Drone MQ-9. Let's see about how much it is, right? The cost of the drones, the famous Reaper, right? $30 million. It says between $30 and $50 million, more or less, per unit. Just imagine, let's suppose they only cost 30 million, right? That they're on sale. That they didn't cost 50 million. Just think about it, just in drones. How much is that in drones? The big ones, right? The large ones, right? There are also smaller drones, like the new and innovative Lucas, right? New, innovative. Innovative, no, right? But new, yes. Innovative, no, because they're just a copy, right? But it's really something. The cost is too much. Just imagine how much, and then, well, to comment on it. Well, to end up on the moon, it's really expensive, man. The wars, man. Get rid of the wars. Don't get rid of the moon mission, right? Please. It's crazy. The daily spending reached figures close to $1 billion per day, more or less. At first. And then it started skyrocketing. It kept skyrocketing, plus the losses. But they say this is such an imbalance where $280 billion is just the beginning of a war where no one knows what the end will be or if it will last months, weeks, or years. The daily operating expenses just to operate are about $1 billion, not counting the cost of ammunition or the cost of losses. They say the strategic level is also the most alarming part because there is no estimate of how much will be spent since they don't even know when it will end. You don't know if the war will last a week, 2 weeks, or a month, so just imagine the expenses, right? The decision to stop the war is not just a military issue, but also involves international pressure and the fear of escalation. That's the military cost, but it's not the real cost. You have to add the issue of oil to get the real cost. Oil prices have already skyrocketed. The market is already open. I was waiting to see if it was going to open or not, and now we see it. Look, it already opened with an upward price gap. Friday's price was this, $96. The price right now has already gone up to $102, so the price shot up to $102. From Friday to today, now it's Monday. It's already Monday the 13th in Asia, so well, the markets have already opened and it's at $102. This is Brent and WTI Texas. It's even higher. That one is at $104 according to what we can see here. $104. That's the price it has, although it just reached 105 when it opened and then dropped a bit to 104. But it came from, the price closed here. $97 WTI Texas, right? And now it's here at $104. That's the price it is now. So now at night, later when we're on the evening broadcast, we'll see how things are going. We'll see how things are going and if this is going up, going down, or what's happening. Like, look, if there's a reaction or something, I'll mention it quickly, maybe a quick broadcast or even on my phone. But at night, we'll talk at length here with the whole community. Let's quickly go to the comments. I won't go on too long since we can talk more tonight. How are you, Francisco Arche and Danny, always battling and both tired? You can count on us to find the approximate truth. We must listen to both sides. I'm speaking from experience. Danny says 2 years in El Salvador. Yes, I've mentioned it before. Danny, greetings and thanks for your comment. Definitely you should always try. Don't just hear one side. No, you need to listen to around 20 sides. War isn't just two sides. It's much more complex. And I know you know that, here we're talking about seeing the factions within each side. There are different sides. There's Iran, but there's the Revolutionary Guard. There are the politicians. There are the opposition. There are those who live abroad, who are also Iranian. It's not just the United States. There are also the Republicans, Democrats, military, and intelligence agencies. Military intelligence and also intelligence agencies like the CIA, for example. And then there's also Europe, NATO, and China. Then there are the Middle Eastern countries. What are they? We have to listen to all of them and start putting together the map, so to speak, of reality more or less as it is. So it's very interesting, What can I tell you? Besides being interesting, it's even important, I think, that we know all this and that we don't just stick to the superficial part of the good guys and the bad guys, in quotes, obviously, right? Instead, we have to go and understand all those realities. I send you a big greeting. Regards. How have you been? How? He says. They were looking for uranium. Camouflage, says Tino, says Carolingo. Pepe. What does the Israeli minister say? He says it's absolutely logical and true, says Carolingo. Which minister? What did the minister say? The defense minister. Yes, that must be it. It says, Monsieur Teresa, how have you been? Hello, thank you very much. Greetings, how are you? Hello. Greetings also to Reynosa, Tamaulipas. How are you? How are you, Sol Medina? It's great to see you. Greetings to Tamaulipas, to Reynosa, very close to here, by the way. Adrian, how have you been? Greetings to Guadalajara. How are you? He says it's called an easement. That means nobody owns it and everyone can pass through. Matier says, clean and without conflicts with the parties. How have you been? Amor Contreras. Hello. Greetings, Denny. How have you been? Tino. Greetings. No, I understand. I understand that Luis is like a summary. Exactly. I understand perfectly. No, I agree with you, obviously. Fidel, how have you been? Greetings. Hello. Greetings. It's called a right-of-way easement. Easement or easement or easement. That's what it's called. Right-of-way easement. Ah, interesting concept. I'm going to write it down here. Thank you very much for this concept. Here in Mexico, that's what it's called. It says servidumbre. No, servidumbre. Yes, that's correct. Servidumbre. It says that an easement is a real right over another person's servient property. It says that it allows the owner of another dominant property to pass through it to access the public road, which is essential when a property is landlocked. This is under the civil code. I imagine that's good in matters of civil code. I suppose it's from Mexico, right? We'll have to see how that works or what it's called in international terms. Around here, that's why it's called the right of way. But yes, that's great information. Thank you. Rick says, how have you been, Rick? Greetings. Long live the king. Greetings to Houston. How have you been? He says you forgot about Israel. Carolingio says, how have you been, Carolingio? In what sense, my friend? In what way? We've already discussed Israel, haven't we? But there hasn't been much news about it lately. We already discussed Lebanon and Israel. I don't know. Maybe you missed it. Maybe you didn't catch it. A big shout out, my friend. Greetings, Carolinio. And, well, if there's any news item we might have missed, please send it to us. And if not, then come to the evening broadcast because there we'll obviously have the full summary of everything from the day completely. We're going to try. We're going to make an effort to have all the reports live. We're going to do that. We've already been preparing for this for some time. And we have this idea that everything, absolutely everything here will be live. We'll do it as long as possible, even with a cell phone or brief broadcasts. If there's something to comment on, we'll try to make it live. That's really important. In Spain, Tino says it's called servidumbre de paso too. I know it's quite an interesting term, and servidumbre de paso as well. It's present in most Western countries under this name due to various treaties, which he says is great. Nostra Bola, how have you been, by the way? Robin Williams says, just so you have an idea about diesel in Buenos Aires, in 1 week it went up from 1,700 to 2,000, just like that. Robin William, how come it's that much? Tremendous. Greetings, Ruben, he says they have a parallel reality, and still he says, and not to mention that no one worldwide, dear boy, he says the high school, how is the high school? And the planes from southern Lebanon, they are Shiites and sympathizers, but being sympathizers doesn't mean they don't have the right to live. They can be sympathizers of whatever they want, even if you don't agree, but that doesn't take away their rights to anything at all, right? You can be a sympathizer of that, and that doesn't mean you lose the right to your home or your family or to live well and peacefully. I mean, it's not an issue. If you're a terrorist operative, you'll obviously be attacked. No, imagine if things worked that way. Just because you support something I disagree with, they'd come after you. That's not possible. You can't end things like that. Yes, obviously that's a very long-standing problem. At some point it's going to have to be solved because a lot of hostility is being generated in the world, in the Western world, where their allies are because of the way they're operating. It's an issue that will have to be handled carefully, and above all, it's something very specific to this regime. What's his name? Netanyahu, who is quite a character, accused of war crimes. I'm just saying, just so we don't forget that he's definitely not a saint. He's a character with many shades of grey, more dark than light. This remarkable character, greetings, David Flores, hello Eliseo, to the whole community. For now, we'll keep commenting, we'll keep talking with the whole community. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll keep talking. A big hug. See you later.